Hey, you guys. So I had a Patreon request, which was, why do I hate Brandi Glanville? So I decided to do a YouTube video about it because my patrons kind of have a feel for this already. So it's kind of like old news for them. So I figure this kind of gossip I could share on my YouTube. Anyway, so Brandi Glanville, I don't necessarily hate. I think that she thinks she's way more awesome than she is, but I guess that's a reoccurring theme with some of the cast members of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, right? So that's not a huge surprise. My issue with Brandi Glanville goes back to when I was on the show with her, and I can break it into a few, like three probably anchored items that made me really dislike her. So I'll tell you what they are now. Okay, so item one was back when I first met Brandi Glanville. First of all, she was brought into the mix on the show by the producers to sort of be like a grenade amongst all of the housewives, okay? And I was friends with a few of the housewives by the time she entered the picture, meaning that moment where you see her walk in. I had already been hanging out with some of the housewives before I went on the show and started shooting, okay? So we were sort of already knew each other and they accepted that I was gonna be on the show. And then all of a sudden this Brandi Glanville girl shows up with a broken leg, hobbling in, and she's not really a part of the group. And I think everybody was shocked, and I was a little bit resentful because to me, she did not represent someone who was truly in the group. They represented that she was friends with Adrienne Maloof, and that's who brought her in. It wasn't true. She wasn't friends with Adrienne Maloof. So that was just some random storyline that the producers, I guess, made up to introduce her. So that started it. And then from there, she would just keep saying these really outrageous things, which I know was really good for TV. But being that I, at the time, thought I was on a reality show about friendship and about lifestyle in Beverly Hills, I was sort of shocked by the stuff that she was saying and doing on the show, because it actually wasn't real. Like, no one in Beverly Hills would do the things that she was doing. So I was like, it was off-putting for me. But I didn't understand the reality game now. Like, I totally get why she did it now. But at the time, I was like, this girl is, like, ridiculous. Like, no one does this. I mean, this isn't, Real Housewives of Sacramento. This is Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. So, she kind of was coming for everybody. She was basically trying to create as much drama as she possibly could with anyone she could. So, like, she was just constantly, like, although you guys felt that she was a victim in season 2, right? What you're not seeing is she's just, every minute she gets, she's needling people with different things, like unfounded gossip that she had. She would go on Twitter and she'd pick up on things that people were saying on the show. And, like, she would pretend like she had a rumor or she had heard something or she knew something that was true about the person, but it wasn't. And so, for example, she said my fiance was cheating on me, and he was, but there was no rumor about that, okay? I found that out years later from a PI. She just jumped to the conclusion because he wasn't home a lot. So she admitted to me, because we went out to dinner before the show started, that she was basically prepared to lie or do whatever she had to do to keep her position on the show and be a housewife, because she needed it for her kids. She needed to make, money, I guess. At that time, she wasn't getting stable child support or something. I don't know what that story was, but I remember that being part of the drama. And so she was like, I've got to make this work no matter what. So screw everybody. Like, everybody is up for grabs or whatever. And I was like, wow. Like, to me, it never even occurred to think like that. I was just like, what? Like, and she told me also that she was going to come out that Mauricio was cheating on Kyle. And I was like, this is in season 2 and before we started shooting. And I was like, but there is no, like, evidence that Mauricio's cheating on Kyle. I was kind of blown away by that because she had 4 kids and they were really young, and I just was like, wow. Now, I didn't know the show was this cutthroat at the time. Like now, if I went on the show, I would have everyone's rap sheet, including my own, ready to go. Like I would be like, oh, they're coming for me. I better be ready with the following retaliation and be ready to rock. Okay. So like, you know, I'm not saying that Brandi wasn't playing the game right. She was, but I was not in that game. So I didn't respect it. You understand? So anyway, I didn't want her attacking my friends that were, I saw them as my friends at that time, you know, in a way that was, I felt dishonest. And I wasn't hip to all the gossip and stuff that I am now. So anyway, that really upset me about her. I didn't like it. And I felt that it was really kind of evil and dark. Okay, so Brandi, also the second item was she came for Kim, who I really liked, okay, off camera. And I felt like Kim was vulnerable, and I like to protect vulnerable people. You guys, you know, felt that Brandi was the victim. I didn't ever see her that way, obviously, from the first part of this video. But when she went for Kim, I'm like, Kim is definitely dealing with some abuse, you know, some substance issue. And Kim's kids were lovely. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, why is she going for Kim, who's so vulnerable? And then she was also coming for me, saying that, you know, my ex was cheating. And again, at that time, my ex didn't want to go on the show. So I'm thinking she's going to end my relationship by putting this kind of stuff out in the public eye that isn't true. Again, I didn't know that it was true, but my family was at risk, which I was like, I don't care about this show, like enough to destroy my family over it. It's just silly. And then I also got pissed because every time someone retaliated on Brandi, she was like, oh, poor me, I'm the victim. Oh my God, my heart. Oh, go for the kids. And just all this like in other words, I can say the worst thing to you, but if you come back with anything to retaliate against me saying the worst thing to you, I'm going to cry about it and be all vulnerable and a victim and poor me and I'm so effed up. And that bothered me. I was like, look, if you're going to play at least at that level of like jerky, then you better be ready to take it. I hate people that give it and don't take it. It's so annoying. Okay, so anyway, you guys saw some of this play out on the reunion. I kind of say to Brandi, listen, lady, you're not innocent in all this, okay? So cut the crap. You know, it was basically the gist of my reunion speech to Brandi. I even said it to her if you look at game night. I'm like, you instigated this. Why are you like, you know, poor me? You instigated this by calling out that Kim's in the bathroom doing crystal meth, which, by the way, she wasn't. She wasn't doing crystal meth. She was disheveled because she obviously was doing some sort of substance at home or before she came. And then she got there and she was disheveled, and Kyle went in the bathroom to help her fix herself. And also she fixed herself. So, I mean, that's what she was doing in the bathroom. She wasn't doing crystal meth, okay? And crystal meth, I mean, it makes me question, like, does anyone know what it's like to be on crystal meth? Because it like, you could never go shoot in front of cameras on crystal meth. So anyway, there was this natural competition between Brandi and I because she was a friend and I was a friend, and the producers obviously wanted one of us to feel like they were going to be able to be a housewife and one of us wasn't, so we were sort of pitted up against each other competitively from the beginning anyway. So that was never going to breed itself into a good friendship, you know, unless she was super sweet. It would never have happened. So, I mean, I want to say that to be fair. Now, her and I end up getting in this huge Twitter war, which is what followed. And we had done some press together. We had traveled and done press together. And she was like, you know, she was always kind of into her own thing. And every time I did press with her, she would kind of come on the attack for me or make fun of me or, you know, be kind of like, I'm a super hot model girl and you're not, you know, take that energy and be that way. You know, so I'd have to always be like protecting myself. And whatever, she took any interview, we were doing an interview about Christmas. We're doing a Christmas video for E. And we are doing like a gingerbread house. And we start off and I'm like, Christmas, this is great. Let's look at Christmas trees, at a bunch of different Christmas trees, blah, blah, right? So Brandi starts talking about drugs, and she's like, I forget what it was, like the powdered sugar looks like drugs, and she's like bringing up drugs, and then we end up in like a war over the gingerbread house, and we're like throwing flour around, the gingerbread house gets ruined, and I'm like, why must every time we do something that's like nice and happy and like innocent, you have to like bring up drugs or like sex or something like, you know, like inappropriate? Like, can't we leave Christmas out of it? So this is just like, I'm really, you know, that's all I'm going to say. And I mean, it was everything we did. She was like always, even when I went on whatever, the after show or Watch What Happens, like whatever the hell they call it. She was making fun of me and saying shit. And I'm just like, I remember sitting, and she would never shut up. Like, she had to dominate the conversation. She resented any time I had something to say. She would always like try to talk over me. Oh my goodness. It was so crazy. But Andy loved her, you know. She was a fave. Let's not, you know, let's call a spade a spade. She was till she wasn't. Okay. And I know when she fell out of grace with him, but that's not for this video. I forgot to mention the Twitter war. You probably could find it on Hollywood Reporter, or like, I think they wrote a story about it. Anyway, it was like late at night, and Brandi was like on some sort of sleeping thing, like drug, like pill or something. As she was going to sleep, she's tweeting, and she used to be really open about that, right? And I was following her, and I was watching the Twitter, and I saw it, and somebody wrote something like, maybe you shouldn't be doing drugs on the show or like off the show with all this situation with your kids. And I think it was to do with like her taking drugs on the plane or something. I don't know what it was with the season 2. I forget now. But anyway, I retweeted it. Okay. This is how it started. And she went, as always, like gangbusters, you know, on the attack. Boom. So she starts saying all this mean shit about me, you know, mudslinging or whatever at me, and I'm coming back, and we're going back and forth. So she blocked me, okay? Now, I mean, come on, how petty. Like, I would never block anyone, you know? Who am I to block somebody? Like, have your opinions. I've had every possible worst things in the world said about me. And I judge just as much as everybody judges. I'm no saint, so I'm not going to block people. I'm just going to ignore it, or I'm going to retweet it, or I'm going to own it. And I'm going to go, you're right, I'm a jerk. Great. So let's just get through that and keep going. Anyway, so she blocks me, and I'm just like, whatever. This is so silly. And that ends that. Now, let's jump forward. So I go on Danielle Staub's podcast, and her producer, Ryan, is Brandi Glanville's producer, Ryan, on her podcast. Okay, so they have the same producer. And I say to Ryan, listen, Ryan, I'm like, I am willing to try to Ryan. So Ryan, I said, listen, I'm happy to go on Brandi Glanville's show, or vice versa. She can come on mine. And I'd like to iron out our issues. And I would like to talk to her about it and say, listen, you know, this is what really made me pissed at you. Like our own little mini reunion on the podcast. So Brandi Glanville, I guess, Ryan must have said something to her, and she went on and said something like, I would never have DanaWilkey on my podcast. And I would never, like, in other words, I was so beneath her, and she's so ridiculously, like, so amazingly famous and amazeballs that, you know, I'm not worthy enough to be on her program or whatever. And then I went back and said, listen, lady, I was like, listen, lady, I got like, you know, 50 Patreons from your little like moment of calling me, you know, saying you would never have me on your show. So thanks. But like, I wouldn't want to go on your show now either. Like, why would I give her like that? Can you imagine how many people would listen to that podcast? Why would I ever help her like that now? Like, I even tried to make amends and I didn't have to. And that's her response. No, she doesn't. Now she can like never make, now I'll never talk to her. No, never. But what a missed opportunity. We could have had, you know, worked out our issues in front of all the fans. And I think that would have been really fun. But no, Brandi's, you know, she just wants to be Brandi. But anyway, I know you guys love her, so you can keep her. Oh, and by the way, if you have any complaints, put them on Brandi's podcast feed.